Oh, I'm moving on.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm making sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
you want to?
Do what Spencer. You see where Spencer is?
Yeah.
Do what Spencer do.
Loud as hell.
Yeah. I'm ready.
Get you up this minute. Spence, can you move a little? Thank you.
Loud.
3, 2, 1. Go. So in honor of W.E.B. Du Bois' birthday, which is tomorrow, I'm going to start off with a quote. A system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect. The recent report from the New York State Attorney General exposed what many of us already knew, that Robin Dahl and Meg Kelly of the Saratoga Springs Police Department colluded in order to violate the fundamental rights of protesters, which are guaranteed by the First Amendment. This revelation is not only a damning indictment of the corruption that currently exists within our local institutions, but reveals a dangerous pattern across the United States in which those in power are working to suppress and criminalize rightful dissent. Since 2020, city officials have engaged in fear-mongering tactics that have undermined the work of Saratoga BLM and caused an irreversible wedge in our community. It is particularly egregious to falsely claim that our organization, whose members and supporters have never been accused of harm, as violent disruptors that pose a threat to our community, all while behind closed doors expressing the desire to violently assault organizers and protesters. Despite the damning evidence presented in the report, there has been no accountability. Many of the key decision makers, actors implicated in these violations have conveniently left their positions, hoping to evade responsibility. However, their departure does not absolve them of their crimes, nor does it erase the trauma and damage inflicted upon those most directly impacted in their actions. While they enjoy the luxury of moving on, joining boards, and starting podcasts, Saratoga BLM and our supporters have been left with the brunt of misplaced backlash as a result of their abuses of power. The extent to which these individuals weaponize power and city resources on surveilling and targeting innocent individuals should alarm all members of the Saratoga Springs community. The surveillance group responsible for stalking and intimidating the then 21-year-old college student simply based on racial discrimination was not only a blatant misuse of taxpayer dollars, but an indictment on the racism embedded in our law enforcement agencies. Instead of allocating resources towards addressing genuine threats to public safety or investing in vital community resources such as public housing, shelters, and social services, our taxpayer dollars are squandered on baseless surveillance and harassment tactics that serve only to perpetuate fear and oppression within marginalized communities. This egregious misuse of funds underscores the urgent need for a comprehensive change within our department and the judicial systems, prioritizing accountability and transparency. It is high time that we reevaluate our priorities and ensure that the public resources are directed towards initiatives that genuinely serve the needs of our communities rather than Furthermore, the insidious tactics employed by law enforcement extend beyond mere surveillance and false accusations, as evidenced by the appalling actions taken against organizers in the aftermath of the protest, which is under scrutiny. It is deeply disturbing to learn that retired Sergeant Timothy Sicko, reportedly deemed the go-to guy by former Chief Shane Crooks for his unquestioning compliance, was tasked with filing complaints against protesters based on falsified witness statements. This egregious abuse of power once again highlights the pervasive culture of impunity within the Saratoga Springs Police Department. Moreover, the reprehensible act of the former mayor, Meg Kelly, personally enlisting the police department to call Child Protective Services based on nothing more than a desire to intimidate our co-founder, Lexis Figueiredo, was a flagrant abuse of power. The alarming influences wielded by conservative and alt-right unelected political leaders such as Rob Arago also represent a direct threat to the principles of democracy Elected officials have a duty to represent the interests and voices of their constituents, not bow to the demands of external forces and right-wing extremist groups whose agendas run counter to the well-being of the community that they supposedly serve. It is unacceptable for elected officials to prioritize the desires of these individuals over the legitimate concerns and grievances of countless community members who have taken the time to voice their opposition to the mistreatment of protesters for the last 4 years. By ignoring the voices of the community while bowing to the demands of these figures, Robin Dalton betrayed the trust placed in her by the people of Saratoga Springs and undermined the democratic process. The release of this report, while a crucial step towards accountability and justice, is merely the beginning of a long overdue reckoning with the systemic injustices and abuse of power that have plagued our community for far too long. The revelations contained within this report shed light on a pervasive culture of vilification and persecution that community organizers have endured at the hands of the last 3 administrations. It is deeply troubling that instead of engaging in dialogue and collaboration with those working tirelessly to advocate for the rights and well-being of our community, these administrations choose to demonize and target individuals for speaking truth to power. The fact that Lexus Figueiredo is now facing trial simply for exercising his First Amendment right to speak at City Council meetings is a glaring example of the lengths to which those in positions of authority will go to silence dissent and intimidate activists. This egregious abuse of the legal system to suppress legitimate forms of protest and advocacy is an affront to the principles of democracy and justice upon which our society is supposedly built upon. It sends a chilling message that speaking out against injustice will not be tolerated and that those who dare challenge the status quo will be met with harsh reprisal. The hope that accompanies the release of this report is tempered by the disheartening reality of ongoing patterns of misconduct and impunity within the Saratoga Springs Police Department. Tim Cole's deliberate attempt to control the narrative and downplay the severity of the findings underscores a broader pattern and lack of accountability that plagues the Saratoga Springs city government. However, despite the intimidation and persecution faced by community organizers, Saratoga BLM's resilience and determination remains unwavering. This report serves as an inflection point for our community. It is imperative that we stand in solidarity with those who have been unjustly targeted and marginalized and fight tirelessly for a future where the voices of all members of our community are heard, respected, and valued. This report marks only the beginning of our journey towards justice, but it is unjust to ensure that it is not the end.
Next, we have Mark Mishler, a lawyer.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Alexis, for that beautiful statement. It's hard for me to add much more to that, but I want to emphasize that the promise of democracy is not just some abstract notion. What it means is that the people who live in a community have actual control and input, and they are listened to, and they are part of the process in a meaningful way, and that their concerns are listened to in a meaningful way, and that they can engage meaningfully. And this is not just some nice idea. This is how this is supposed to work in the city of Saratoga Springs, in Saratoga County, in New York State, and in this country. And betrayals of democracy, such as what happened in the city of Saratoga Springs by the leadership, by the mayor, the commissioner of public safety, the police chief, the assistant police chief, and many, many others. These are not abstract issues. These are real. It affected real people's lives. It caused real harm to real people when democracy, or the promise of democracy, is betrayed as it was. It was betrayed in ways that, while we thought we knew pretty much all the ways that they had betrayed democracy and violated people's rights, we learned some new things. We learned the depth of their depravity in this report, wonderful report from the Attorney General's office. We learned how angry these democratically elected or appointed leaders of the city of Saratoga Springs were. What were they angry about? They were angry that people in Saratoga Springs, Black people and others and allies, came together to say that there is a sordid history of racism in Saratoga Springs, and it's time to address it. And for those in power, that was something they just could not accept. rather than engaging in real dialogue, rather than looking honestly at the history of Saratoga Springs and the reality that's faced by people now, not just history, instead of that, they took every possible conceivable steps, and honestly, some steps that I could never have conceived of in order to undermine what these activists and what the community was demanding. And so now we're in a position where we have, due to the extraordinary work of the Attorney General's office, a blueprint for exactly what happened, the depth of the betrayal, the depth of the depravity, the depth of the racism that led to that depravity on the part of these officials. And we now know what happened. We knew most of it already, but now we really have it clearly. And it gives us a blueprint for how to move forward. And the blueprint has to be that the city of Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County in New York State can never again tolerate the kind of actions by elected officials and appointed officials as what happened here in Saratoga Springs over the past several years. The blueprint also is that we cannot allow any governmental body in New York State to tolerate or to ignore the depth of racism and the history of racism and the legacy of racism and the current pain caused by existing racism in their communities. That it's important for people to speak out, to organize together, to stand together, and that's what Black Lives Matter in Saratoga has done for the past 3 years, almost 3 years, right?
4 years.
Almost 4 years, almost 4 years. Remarkable work by Saratoga BLM during this period and others, and that work will continue because the problems have not been solved. We just have a very clear picture now of exactly how bad the problems were here. So I just want to close by saying it has been and continues to be a great honor to represent many of the members of Saratoga BLM. As a sort of older person with gray hair, I feel I can say that this is inspiring, that these people who are all, they're not all young, but they're all younger than me, give me great hope for the future, great hope for what we can all do together as we fight racism, as we fight injustice, and we'll move together. As Alexis mentioned, there's still one case pending. We've had every single case dismissed, except for one that's still pending. I'm a little constrained is what I can say because I'm a lawyer in a pending case, but you know, it's a ridiculous case, and we're going to keep fighting that, and hopefully we'll end up, Saratoga BLM will end up with a perfect record of 100% of all of the cases brought against them dismissed. That's our goal. So thank you all for being here. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is TJ Sangare. I'm the program director here with Saratoga Black Lives Matter. Thank you all for coming out. I have a simple and straightforward message for everyone. As shocking as this report was for many people, the contents of it was of no surprise to my group, nor many of the people who have been involved or followed this movement over the past couple of years. If anything, this damning report exemplifies many of the criticisms that SSPD and the city of Saratoga Springs have faced, not only due to their actions towards us, but also towards the heartbreaking death of Darryl Mount. Transparency, I see none of it. Accountability, I see none of it.
Nope.
An attempt to bridge the gap between those running the city and the marginalized community members in it, I see none of it. What I do see is a pattern of culture amongst those in power. One where people such as Robin Dalton, Meg Kelly, Crooks, and James Montanino abuse the power that was entrusted to them by their citizens and constituents. But don't think that just because many of these people are out of their positions means that these problems are solved, as these are systemic issues that must be addressed at the root, from top to bottom. And if you don't believe me, look at the current Public Safety Commissioner, Tim Cole, who only waited a few hours to do an interview where he questioned the validity of the report that was published. Let me tell you something, Tim. Now is not the time to justify civil rights violations, nor is it the time to invalidate any of our experiences.
Yep.
Because clearly I wasn't lying when I said I was told I had to drive 3 hours back from college or else troopers would be sent to Vermont to arrest me and bring me back. Clearly, we weren't lying when we said that we would never keep someone from getting their heart medication because everyone's safety is our number one priority. Clearly, we weren't lying when we said that certain city council members had it out for us, as Robin Dalton said in her own words that she wanted to repeatedly punch and kick Chandler Hickenbottom and my cousin Molly Dunn in their faces. No, now is not the time to justify any of that. It's a time for people to listen to those who have been impacted, and it's time to change this culture.
Could you all spell your names for me, the ones that spoke, really quickly?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alexis Brown, Alexus Brown, like the color.
And then TJ Sangare, Sangare.
And then your name, sir?
Mark, K. Mishler, Mishler.
And then I just have one question for you guys. Other than today with this press conference, how are you going to respond to the city as well as the Attorney General?
I mean, for one, we'll be responding to the city with multiple lawsuits, probably a class lawsuit that we'll be filing against the city. As far as Meg Kelly, I'm going to be trying to press charges for making a false report to CPS, which is a violation of our rights, and it is a Class A misdemeanor, as well as Chief Crooks as well, former Chief Crooks. We're going to be pressing charges on him as well. I'm going to be speaking to my lawyer. If it's okay, I may be going down to file a complaint as soon as we get done with this press conference. So we're going to be looking for charges. We're looking for a justification. We're looking for justice. You see, Robin Dalton said she had a bloodlust, right? We have a justice lust. We have a lust for justice. That's what gets me excited. Freedom gets me excited. Equity gets me excited. Diversity makes me excited. That's what I like to hear. So we're responding to the Attorney General's office, asking for them to continue to look into the other doings of Saratoga Springs Police Department and the City of Saratoga Springs Police Department, because we know that this is not the end all. We know that it's not the first time they violated rights. We know that they started violating our rights in 2020, and we haven't forgotten. We know that July 30th should be looked into more than what it was. We know that they said that they came with a tank from Iraq. But what else did they do? What were their plans that day? How much money went towards this? The people want to know, and people aren't going to have it. We aren't going to have it anymore. And I think that we've shown time and time again that whether you keep us in cells for 12 hours with no water or food and no medication, and you separate us, give us no mask, you want to rip us in front of our kids, you want to rip us out while we're working, you want to come and rip somebody up from college, we still are going to keep on coming. We're going to keep on coming. When the empire strikes back, we come back even harder. Plain and simple. It's not a game. This is our lives. I think people need to realize that this is not it's not a joke. Like, this is our livelihoods. Our children had to deal with this. Our family members had to deal with this. We get threats to this day now on our social media's websites and to our phones because of this. And now we have a new public safety commissioner, like you said, Tim Cole. Not any better. Not any better. Not any better. It all comes from the same cloth. If you read the report, it says that the conservative party leader was involved in a lot of this. These are conservative Republicans. These same people run our city now. I said it before, the people of Saratoga Springs have been duped, and we will make sure that the people who are elected now will never be reelected in this city again. That's our mission, and that's what we're going to do. Plain and simple.
What about the recommendations that were made? Do they feel right to you? Those recommendations, are they right?
The recommendations feel right. They don't feel strong enough. Also, I want to see criminal charges pressed because they're under the legal part of the legal insert in the report. It clearly said that they violated some legalities. So I'm going to call for the city council and the AG to call for a special prosecutor to come here and look at these charges and get these people locked up. We want justice. The same way that they would lock me up or lock us up quick for speaking too much, we want you locked up for violating rights.
Why should the scope of this go beyond?
We got more speakers. We got more speakers.
All right, okay. Sorry. That was good.
We have Dio representing Capital District DSA coming up to say some words.
Hi. On behalf of the Capital District Democratic Socialists of America, we are happy to finally see the release of the Attorney General's investigation into the violations of the civil rights of Black Lives Matter activists and protesters by the Saratoga Springs Police Department and Saratoga Springs city officials. After almost 3 years of waiting for answers, The report authenticates that Saratoga police and politicians lied to mislead the public about Saratoga BLM and their supporters, and they intentionally deprived them of their civil rights. The 30-page report details repeated calls from the city government and the Saratoga Springs Police Department to arrest BLM activists when protesters demonstrated in the city. Assistant Police Chief Catone threatened to pull out every single connection his family has made over the last 130 years to stop BLM's narrative in response to activists exercising their civil rights. The Attorney General's investigation did not find the protest to be unlawful in any way. The report shows that Saratoga BLM repeatedly complied with police orders during the protests. But despite this, protesters were met with, according to the Attorney General, quote, horse-mounted police, dozens of officers in riot gear, and an armored vehicle designed for combat in Iraq. The report shows that officers from various agencies fired pepper balls, shoved, tackled, arrested, and forcibly dispersed protesters. The results of the Attorney General's investigation dispels the rumor that Saratoga BLM protesters blocked a man from getting heart medication. This rumor was created when the SSPD police chief assigned a sergeant to issue charges on 6 protesters for allegedly stopping a car with a passenger who allegedly needed medication. The charging officer, as Alexis stated earlier, was selected for this job because he was, quote, a go-to guy who would not push against orders. This fabrication led to warrants being issued. Members of the community were arrested based on lies. Alex Patterson was arrested at work. TJ Sangari was pulled from college and arrested. The SSPD published the names of all these individuals doing untold damage to their futures based on a lie coming from the highest power in our city government and the police department. The perpetuation of these accusations have spread throughout our community, damaging the involved groups, publicly named individuals, and the movement as a whole. It's no surprise that after these lies have been shared as truth by elected officials, there have been increased tension in our community, including harassment and threats aimed at the organizers of Saratoga BLM, both inside and outside of city council meetings. The AG's report concluded that SSPD's actions harmed the public. It uncovered that Saratoga Springs had an official policy of retaliating against Saratoga BLM protesters. The SSPD brought charges against protesters based on unsupported evidence, initiated a CPS referral without cause, violated their own policies. SSPD and the city failed to investigate and penalize officer misconduct. So our question is, what stops this from happening again? The police went through training in March of 2021 to learn how to respond to protests. Their tiered approach that they were trained in resulted in the abuse of power on July 14th, 2021. The bloodlust for arrest came from the highest levels of the city government and officers with decades of experience. Since 2021, the police budget has continued to steadily increase. Elected officials failed to respond to subpoenas while our community foots their legal bills. Not only has the city refused to implement changes to address the problems in the police force, the retaliatory targeting of activists has continued under consecutive administrations. The Public Safety Commissioner following Dalton, Jim Montanino, went on to charge both Chandler Hickenbottom and Lex Figueroa with crimes for speaking out of turn in city council meetings. The accusations from the previous administration has made Saratoga BLM a convenient scapegoat for Montanino's failure to address police misconduct. The initial response to the AG's report from current Public Safety Commissioner Tim Cole was not one of introspection, but one of deflection. Instead of considering how his administration can be better, he immediately tried to discredit the investigation in the media before the report was published. The Attorney General's report affirms what Saratoga BLM has been telling us for a long time. Instead of discrediting their lived experiences, the city of Saratoga Springs needs to address its legacy of institutionalized racism. We cannot move forward until amends are made and the roots of issues are addressed. The recommendation for remediation listed in the AG's report are a good start, but they don't go far enough. Thank you.
Bear with us, we've been waiting 3 years.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Chandler Hickenbottom, and I want to just start out by saying that I am Saratoga Springs. I would just like to start by saying I'm a lifelong resident of Saratoga Springs. I was born in Saratoga Springs Hospital in April of 1996. I went to preschool at Dorothy Nolan in 2000, Lake Avenue Elementary School from 2001 to 2006, Maple Ave Middle School from 2007 to 2009, Saratoga Springs High School from 2010 to 2014. With that being said, I will never be called a grifter. This is my town. When people ask me why I do the work that I do, I say it because it's hard. I can go to any city in America and do my activism work. I chose Saratoga Springs because this is my hometown and this is my city. I know if I can make change here, I can make change anywhere. Now, let's start with what happened with this investigation. Robin Dalton sent violent and threatening messages to Shane Crooks, threatening to punch me in the fucking mouth. Those are her words directly. And to kick Molly Dunn repeatedly in the fucking mouth. You think punching me in the mouth is going to shut me up? Baby, Devin Anderson couldn't even do that on Park Street. All it did was make me louder. And I will continue to be louder. Robin Dalton changed her words quickly, saying that her words were out of stress and anger. Yet when I speak too loudly because I'm stressed, I'm angry, I'm sad, my voice is criminalized with disorderly conduct. My yelling scared you. It did? But your threats didn't have the same effect on me. You call us thugs and you say that we are violent. The violent one is you. You were in charge of public safety of this community and you did nothing to keep your community safe. You were caught making direct threats towards community members that you were tasked with protecting. On September 7th, and I apologize because this part may get a little bit emotional for me. On September 7th, I watched my niece and my nephew be traumatized by Saratoga Springs Police Department as they were violently ripped from their mommy, watching her be assaulted and their aunt violently arrested. I will never forget my nephew screaming and crying for his mommy, listening to my mommy cry and scream as she watched her youngest child be arrested in front of her. I was denied medication and placed in a cell for hours without access to food or water. I was accused of being an unfit parent because they assumed that my niece and nephew were my children. On September 8th, I was embarrassed when my name was blasted all over the news just days before I started a new job. had to explain to them that I was not a violent or dangerous person. The ripple effect of July 14th and September 7th was a decline in community involvement in protests due to the fear of being arrested. The Saratoga Springs Police Department has felt justified in their actions and have continued to scandalize my name, my brother's name, and Saratoga BLM. I am happy that this report has shed light on the corruption within Saratoga Springs Police Department and the city of Saratoga Springs. Whether the report is accepted in the court of public opinion or not, the AG's office, the state of New York, and our supporters see that Saratoga Springs Police Department and the city of Saratoga Springs have violated our civil rights.
I'm Holiday Hammond from MLK Saratoga.
And I'm Doralee Stanley from Saratoga Springs and a member of MLK Saratoga.
I don't know if there's anything we have to add other than our support, our admiration for these young people and activists. I have always had tremendous respect in MLK Saratoga. We have not always agreed on strategies, but we always supported 100% their right to protest and the importance of freedom of speech, and that we needed to expose the legacy of racism in this community. If you recall where this began, at the beginning of a pandemic, when the disparities between economic and racial groups and how they were able to survive or not the pandemic, and then the horrific murder of George Floyd. We cannot forget where this all began. And they have been so courageous, and I am the dehumanization that occurred from the toppest elected officials as well as those in command of the police department. They dehumanize, because you cannot dehumanize someone and then think it's okay to put them in harm's way, threaten their family. I was a direct witness to many of these incidents that happened. I saw it unfold.
And as a nonprofit organization that supports the principles of Dr. Martin Luther King, in respect to this report by the Attorney General's office, this obviously did not support Dr. King's principles of nonviolence and the eradication of bigotry. We can do better in this community. The support that you are exhibiting by coming out here today shows that we can do better. This year, MLK Saratoga had a theme. The beloved community begins with us. That's all of us. In respect to this report, I'm going to quote some of Dr. King's principles. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yep.
Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. No one is free unless we all are free. These words from Dr. King is a reminder that the Saratoga Springs community has a responsibility to stand up when we witness injustice. This report from the Attorney General's office is just a beginning. It's not complete. There is hope, and there has been opportunity in the future that will be created to have listening sessions and opportunities for the public to weigh in to what has happened here. Any of the efforts moving forward can result in good intentions, but if you don't implement those intentions, they have the potential for the same disastrous results.
You. Couple more.
My name is Samira Sangari. I'm a co-founder of Saratoga BLM and the director of Coalition. I'm Samira Sangari. I'm the co-founder of Saratoga BLM and director of Coalition Work. I'm going to open with the MLK quote. And some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak. They said we destroyed property. They said we were threatening when they were the ones that were talking about bloodlust. They were the ones that were assaulting us. As always, the people who claim to protect and serve, the people who show that they are above the law, are the same ones breaking the law. The evidence is clear who the criminals are and always have been. Let's talk about how a lot of cops left before this report came out. Catone, Crooks, Sicko, and many more for breaking the law repeatedly by unlawfully surveilling, paired with intimidation, taking false witness statements, violating multiple SSPD policies, Catone, and eroding public trust in the police department, not taking action on dismissing Catone when Crooks and Robbins said that the only punishment was dismissal. I'll point out point 7 on the recommendations, how SSPD's internal affairs and officer discipline process should be improved. We've heard that before with Daryl Mount. And mind you, the same people that told Trump he needs to pay $350 million are the same people that are telling SSPD and the city that they have violated our civil rights, they have violated our First Amendment rights. So Trump is not against the law, and neither is Saratoga Springs, SSPD, or Tim Cole. I'm going to talk about my experience now. On September 7th, I was violently arrested and witnessed traumatic arrest on a warrant for disorderly conduct, 3 months after a protest. I remember the fear in my mom's eyes as she reached for my hand while I was being dragged into the station. People were telling me the day after that my dad was pacing around the whole time in panic. I found out that Sicko told my parents that my brother would be ripped from school or he will be pulled out of class, which is illegal. I was cuffed to a bench for 6 hours, over 6 hours, while myself and my group were separated, being told we might have to stay for the night. I then found out I was being surveilled while former Chief Crooks was making a list of Saratoga BLM leaders for false charges. I witnessed tanks used for war in Iraq, paired with fresh billy clubs and riot gear, all because we stand for something that is bigger than us. We stand for something that's bigger than Saratoga, and that's transparency, accountability, and the liberation of oppressed people. How I felt since before this report came out, I felt watched, harassed, reduced to a criminal, the other, and most of all, I felt alone, constantly having to explain myself and humanize myself for years. As said, the death threats we get to this day because the highest power in Saratoga Springs made it that much dangerous for us. This report eased my anxiety, and I felt relieved compared to the dark period of when people did not believe myself and my group. The harm it has caused for them and my family and their family is unimaginable. In the end, this repeats a cycle of not trusting this department, let alone any department. No investigation or disciplinary methods recites what we have been saying for years while being gaslit. With the highest level of democracy found that our civil rights were violated, our First Amendment rights were violated, the implementation of unlawful surveillance, and a clear campaign of ending our narrative. The danger that myself and my group has been put in because of calling out their racism, white supremacy, and lies. And I must emphasize that it is vital to stand up to your oppressors, to stand up and challenge the system again and again and again. Because although we might not see the changes we dream for in this lifetime, we must continue to fight. We must continue to speak and make good trouble, just like our ancestors, by any means necessary. I'm sorry, it's raining. Last thing I'm going to finish with the Malcolm X quote is, I've had enough of someone else's propaganda. I'm for the truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost. And as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole. Thank you.
Can you both also just spell your names for me?
Samira Sangare.
How do you say it?
Samira Sangare. Thank you.
And then your name as well with the red jacket on.
Oh,
Sorry,
Chandler. Yes.
Chandler, Hickenbottom, Hickenbottom. I don't know why I almost forgot my last name.
I'm the Reverend Joe Cleveland. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Saratoga Springs. My name's spelled just like the city. I want to express how grateful I am for the bravery and the love-based work of Saratoga Black Lives Matter. And I want to add to that it should not require bravery to be a citizen of Saratoga Springs. It should not require bravery to advocate for one's own First Amendment rights in Saratoga Springs. It should not require bravery to stand up and say that racism is a real thing that actually happens. It is now a matter of record that the actions of the leadership of the city council and the leadership of the police department nurtured a system that systematically endangered Black lives in this city. The city needs to acknowledge that this is real, that this is what has happened. The city is facing some harsh criticism. The city is going to feel uncomfortable by this criticism. The natural response to that is to be defensive. And I recognize that. I kind of sympathize with that. I've heard harsh criticism directed at me that I've had to listen to. I get that. You need to take a breath. You need to listen. You need to acknowledge what is written in that report. You need to acknowledge that the experiences of Black people, when they tell you what it's like to live in this town, that they're not lying. You need to acknowledge the fact that when a Black person, what is the reason? What is the reason that if a Black person is standing on the street in Saratoga Springs and a police officer comes towards them, do they have any reason to feel like this should be a source of comfort for them? I believe that the police should be a source of comfort for us. That's not the way it is. So we have a ton of work to do. We have a ton of work to do. If you don't want your citizens of your town to feel intimidated and endangered by your police department,
You need to actively change that culture because that's the way it is for too many people in this town right now. We need to acknowledge what's going on. The city needs to apologize for the wrongs that have been committed, for the violation of First Amendment constitutional rights, for the systematic endangerment of Black citizens of this town and their allies. We need to work towards reconciliation. We need to actively review what has happened and how we want to respond, because I want this town to be a town of hospitality, a town that is rooted in community support for one another, a town that recognizes that our well-being is dependent on each other's well-being, that one can only thrive if your neighbor is thriving. And if your neighbor is feeling endangered and threatened, then you are not safe either. Thank you.
One more.
Yeah, y'all been waiting for this for years.
Hi, I'm Nisha Harris. I'm a member of the Task
Loud, loud,
Force
loud.
on Police Reform and also a lifelong Saratogian. For the past 4 years and counting, we have been constantly told lies by the people indicted in this report and other officials not mentioned. These people have gone to great lengths insisting they are on the side of justice while engaging in violent speech behind closed doors. In addition to the specific findings of rampant misconduct outlined in the AG report, we have heard endless testimonies from community members, both past and present, giving examples of discrimination they have faced in our city, only to be met with disregard and outright rejection from both overtly racist adversaries and supposed allies alike. For anyone who is here, the findings of the Attorney General's report are not a surprise. As a first-hand witness and member of the Task Force for Police Reform, we worked extremely hard to both acknowledge past grievances and to stop new ones from occurring. This action was so important to us that we made it the first recommendation of the 50-point plan to acknowledge, apologize, reconcile, and review and address past conflicts. The former police chief, former commissioners of public safety, the Police Benevolent Association, and former and current members of the police force have all aggressively pushed back against the 50-point plan. And this report makes it glaringly obvious we need these reforms.
Sure do.
It is imperative to keep in mind that this report outlines only some of the abuses perpetrated by Saratoga officials over the course of a single year. Countless other offenses have occurred since 2021, including retaliatory charges that are still being litigated. These calculated, unethical, and vicious actions by our elected officials and public servants are the very definition and evidence of systemic racism. Be aware, the same people who tout law and order when it is in response to Black people's safety and concerns will no doubt object to the findings of the highest enforcement officer of the state, proving that American value, everyone has equal justice under the law, is conditional. What we have learned about Saratoga Springs over the past 4 years, as exposed in the AG report, is that it will do anything to silence people who will speak out against racism, and that it is deeply committed to keeping systems of injustice in place. At this point, failure to enact accountability is a statement, and it casts the city and the people of Saratoga in a very ugly light. On this day in Black history, in the words of James Baldwin, one of the leading voices of the American Civil Rights Movement, who said, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is Patrice Figueroa. Chandler Hickenbottom is my sister, and Els is my brother. And I don't have much to say except for the fact that we have to do better as a town, as a city, as a state. We have to do better as a community. There's not much that was done right by the officials that were in place and are in place today in this town, and there's not much that was done to stop the aggression that Saratoga BLM got from community members because of the false narratives that were being portrayed about this group. This group has done nothing but sacrifice their time, their life, and their families to make sure that we could have a safer community. I too had to watch my niece and nephew when they had to deal with both their parents being arrested on trumped up charges. Now I request that the same thing happens to the families of the officials that were in place that deserve to get charges brought up against them as well. I hope their families have to deal with the same consequences that I had to deal with. I had to leave my work, a whole day, a job, and I take care of humans. I take care of elderly people who need my help by myself in their house, take care of them. I had to leave an elderly human being to go take care of my niece and nephew who were horrifyingly in tears. And one thing that was left out that I'd like to add is that the city officials, when they came and they ripped up Gabby, the mother of my niece and nephew, you guys almost murdered my niece. She was inside of a stroller and you guys pushed her into the road in front of a moving vehicle. If it wasn't for my mother, that girl would not be here today. What would you guys have said? Would you have blamed Gabby for a water bottle for why her daughter was dead? I hope that you and your family feel the same pain that I feel.
There we go. All right. I'll close it out, and I will also answer any questions that the media has.
I don't really have a question, but I just want to say one thing. I didn't really know what this was all about, but I thank you guys for coming here and talking about all this.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate that.
Oh, no, I was worried. Just like, oh, shit.
I think for one thing that hasn't been said is I want to thank the community and all our supporters for ever having the Attorney General report ever to ever be made. It took countless people, thousands of people calling, emailing, calling, posting, sharing, over and over again, emailing again, until finally we heard something. So I want to thank you all for this happening. Some people in this city actually want a real change. We know that there are fascists in this city that don't want change. We know there are fascists in the city that want division. People such as Rob Arago, who is named inside the report as being somebody who had close communication with Robin Dalton, the head of the Conservative Party, the head of the Republican Party. All these people who are said here, who are said that we are the ones who are trying to divide the community, are actually the ones who are dividing the community. We feed the community. We enrich the community with culture. We give out free food. When we give out free food, we're not talking about cheap food. And I've seen people online talk about when we went out. I went out one day with one of the people that work for the city with a contract. We spent $140 on our meal. His contract is $17,000. They pulled the $140 out of there and highlighted it, and that was the focus. You need to worry about the hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars that you're paying out to my family and the rest of my group, who is also my family. So when you feed my family, and we feed the community with what you feed us with, you worry about that. And don't forget that we are taxpayers as well. So when I went out to eat, when we do any of these things, I pay for it as well. And don't forget that my sister, like she said, she takes care of people. She took care of Meg Kelly's sister. disabled sister. So let that be known. She took care of her sister, but she's continuing to destroy my family in an attempt to destroy my family, who will not be broken, who will not be destroyed. Any questions?
About potential lawsuits. You also have a federal lawsuit.
Sure do.
What are the next steps? How much are you asking for? Are you there yet?
For that federal lawsuit, I believe it's $750,000.
For the new one.
The new one.
We haven't talked about it yet.
Mark,
Yeah,
Mark, I need you over here. Talk to lawsuits, boy. Come on. We need you over here. He's the guy. You're asking us how much money are we looking for in our next
In general,
lawsuit.
what is your legal strategy going forward in terms of charges and lawsuits in the wake of the April?
So the legal, we knew that the civil and constitutional rights of the activists in Saratoga BLM were violated. And that, as I said before, that's not new information to us. We have some more details of how deep those violations were. So, I think I'm not going to lay out in the press conference what we're going to do. I think the idea is that there'll be efforts to, on behalf of the activists who were impacted by this, to seek redress for the violations of the constitutional rights through the legal system in federal court. That's certainly what we have in mind. To the extent that there is a basis to attempt to have criminal charges filed against some of the officials or former officials, I think that they should at least face that possibility, that they would face criminal charges for their violations of law, as have been described in detail in the Attorney General's report. And in the group, I don't, as a lawyer, I don't dictate or tell my clients what to do. Saratoga BLM will decide what they will do in terms of the continuation of the political process and the political struggle that they've been engaged in for the past 3.5 years. So that struggle will continue. That's not a legal issue. That will happen alongside of and as part of and symbiotic relationship with the legal issues. So, the legal system is one tool, one arena. We're going to do our best to get some satisfactory responses and answers to that legal arena, but it's not a substitute for, nor does going through the legal system guarantee anybody's rights. What will guarantee the protection of the rights of activists in Saratoga Springs moving forward is the continued engagement and activism and local calling out what needs to be done by that's what the legal system has to offer if somebody's rights are violated is compensation. And every single member of Saratoga BLM deserves compensation from the city of Saratoga Springs. And and they deserve a lot of compensation.
A lot.
So a lot.
That's the answer. We're suing for a lot.
The answer is a lot. That's a legal term.
Will there ever be a moment when you can come to terms with the city leaders and move forward past these points?
Yeah. So we have tried time and time again to move forward with the city, to have meetings with city council members, to have backdoor meetings as well as public meetings. And we are usually told that there are going to be changes to be made. We get a lot of promises. It never happens. What we get is treated like fear-monger stuff. We get dehumanized. We get treated as terrorists. We get treated as outsiders in our own community. That's what we get. We have a new administration in now. We've heard John Stafford speak about BLM a lot. We've heard Tim Cole speak about BLM a lot. I haven't had one phone call from Tim Cole. I haven't had one phone call from John Stafford. I have not seen them try to bridge any gaps whatsoever. What I've seen is them trying to create more of a gap in our community. What I've seen is the mayor call us a hate group. I've seen that. He's written it. He wrote it. He called us pro-Hamas. The same way the last administration called us pro-Hamas, he called us a terrorist, and he hasn't reached out to us. Now, I know that John Safford goes to the Black Elks Club, so he likes to indulge in our culture. But he's not one with our culture, and he is not one for our people, and he is not fighting for our culture. He is not bridging any gap in our communities. That's what us young Black people are saying. The older folk may feel different, but young Black people in the community are saying John Safford is not here for us, and we will make sure that John Safford is never elected again. Neither will Tim Cole, plain and simple. We are coming back this year with political power. We're going to take back and regain political power in this city, which Black people in the city have never had. We're going to create a structure that we have never had, a safety net for Black and brown and poor people that Saratoga Springs have never seen. And that is what they were afraid of.
And that's what changes.
You have a lot of changes to be made and a lot of steps going forward. What's the first step coming up?
The first step would be acceptance of what actually happened. If they can't accept what happened, if they can't accept that they did these things, we can't go forward. We can't go forward. We'll continue to be in the streets. We'll continue to disrupt city council meetings. We'll continue to clap our hands at city council meetings and do whatever we need to do. Even that was a criminalization of Black people to say that things of our culture, we can't whistle, we can't snap, we can't stomp, we can't do it, snap our fingers, we can't suck our teeth. What can we do? We can't eat a meal. We can't breathe. We can't walk. We can't talk. What can we do? They just don't want us here. But we are going nowhere. Once again, we remain steadfast and strong in the face of adversity, and we are never going to turn back.
You mentioned the fear mongering, and the AG report talked a lot about the officials facing, arrest on charges that didn't exist.
Yep.
That's your message to the officials. What about to the residents that believe those things?
Oh.
What's your message to them that aren't exactly on board with your message?
One thing for the people who are completely against us and going to continue to be against us even after this report, I can tell you that you'll be paying for our future and my kids' future. Straight up. Your tax money will be going towards my kids' futures. The same kids' futures that you tried to destroy. To the people who are on the fence of it, I hope this opens your eyes. That what we've been saying this whole time, the gaslighting that we receive, even by local community members, by local community groups. People who said that our tactics were not what was right. Well, our tactics got this investigation started. Our tactics got the first time that people have ever went through and seen what the SSPD is doing. And one thing else I can say is, I really wish, and I always wonder, what would have happened in 2013 if the AG had the right and the courage to investigate Darryl Mount's death? What would have been uncovered before emails were erased, before text messages were deleted, before paperwork was shredded, before people quit, before people were shut down?
Same shit.
So I will tell them as well, this is they said that we were making things up when it came to Darryl Mount. They said we were making it up when it came to this. And I'm going to tell you, the same way we didn't believe the SSPD when it came down to our violations, I still don't believe that Darryl Mount fell from a fall for scaffolding on his own.
Thank you.
Plain and simple. I'm never going to stop. You don't have to believe me, but you can't prove that he didn't. I think the jury got it wrong. And it happens many times. Unfortunately, it was an all-white jury.
Not his peers.
Not a jury of his peers. So to the people of Saratoga Springs, I want to say, you got it wrong. Come out and look and see what we really do. When we post up these community events, we are the only group that has an annual Juneteenth event in the city. When we put up our Juneteenth event, you come out, you represent with us. When we come here and we bring Black August to you, and we talk about abolitionists, and we talk about future leaders and past leaders who are locked up in prison right now for speaking too much and doing exactly what we do, we ask you to come out. When we have our poetry events, spoken word events that are a way to bring our community together and cultural art, we ask you to come and see. Come be with us. Come be a part of us. Let's change the city together. And that's been the message of Saratoga Black Lives Matter since the beginning. But unfortunately, it's been distorted by all the lies, all the fear mongering, and all the harassment and gaslighting of our community and our city and our people. We have a free refrigerator, the only free refrigerator in Saratoga Springs. We feed the homeless. We advocate for the homeless. We advocate for the poor. We advocate for mental health. We advocate for diversity, inclusivity, and equity. Sorry, I get my words twisted sometimes. This is from my mind. This isn't written down. This is something I thought about. This is me reading off of my brain and my past experiences. To these people, you see my children ripped in front of their mother and their mother ripped. CPS, it was more than just a CPS call. It was them coming to our house, searching through our house, talking to my kids, exposing them to having to ask people, talk to strangers in our house during COVID, coming into our house, asking them, do our parents feed you enough? Do we beat you? Do we sell drugs? What do we do for a living? Do we have guns in the house? Like, that is the worst part of the report to me. It isn't what happened to me. It's what happened to my children and my children's outlook in life from here to now on. My kids needing to have therapy. My kid who has ADHD having more problems in school. My kids being scared of authority. My kids being defiant to authority. This all started and ends with Saratoga Springs Police Department. We told you SSPD was no good. When we say fuck the police, it's the end of the world. It's no, we need more decorum. But when we have city officials saying they want to kick people in their mouth repeatedly, saying they have bloodlust, saying they want to kick people in the mouth, punch them in the mouth, it's no. I was just angry. But with my anger from being abused by this police since I was 11 years old, at 36 now, that's 25 years, a quarter of a century of being harassed and abused by the same police department. You tell me you don't believe me? Shame on you. Shame on anybody in our community who never believed us and never will. Shame on the people that even when this story comes out, they're still going to say you're wrong. Shame on the people who are going to say that Letitia James is a Democrat and she's here to fight for Democrats.
Yeah.
And also, a strong word to them, we are no longer Democrats. We are the Working Family Party. Woo! We're going to rebuild the Working Family Party. The Working Family Party for the people. Not for the two groups. People. Not for the blue or red. We're for all the colors. We're for the rainbow.
Ooh. Rainbow Coalition.
Anything else?
Unless you have something else to add.
Only thing else I would say is that, it's also good to have acknowledgement. It's good to say sorry. But I believe there should be an overhaul of that Saratoga Springs Police Department. Every officer that was involved in any of these things, who were dealing with criminal things and investigating and surveilling and abusing their powers, including the Saratoga County Sheriffs as well. Yeah. Let's not forget about them. And the Saratoga County Sheriffs and the state police were part of all these actions. Yes. This is not just SSPD. Yes. These are all these jurisdictions. There is the Schenectady Police Department who was a part of this as well. The Troy Police Department was a part of this as well. Albany Police Department is really well. So there should be a way bigger scope of the investigation that has to happen. And same way we call for the people to call for investigation to SSPD, we're going to call for our supporters and anybody that knows about this to call for investigation to these departments as well. And their links to the FBI and their links to this SSPD. The head of the PBA should be fired.
Yeah.
Paul Veach.
Yep. For saying they want to perform.
Any of these officers who violated their policies of SSPD, the same way they did with Daryl Mount's case, needs to be reckoned with. We will be calling for an overhaul of the police department. And if we don't get an overhaul of the police department, you will hear us years from now calling for an overhaul of the police department. And the same way it took years for this, we'll get that as well. But once again, we are not going to stop being determined to fight for our people. We fight for the voiceless. We scream for the unheard. That's all we have to say. Rest in peace, Daryl Mount. Justice for Daryl Mount. No justice, no peace. ACAB. Fuck 12. Free Palestine. Free Gaza.
Thank you. Power to the people.
I got in a good spot. Now I'm gonna move.